Tonight, the fog of war. Evidence shows an Islamic Jihad rocket misfiring into a Gaza hospital. An untold number dead as President Biden vows U.S. support in the war against Hamas.
I come to Israel with a single message. You're not alone. You are not alone.
Plus,
The attack was made because we are perceived as being weak and ineffective.
the politics of war spilling onto the campaign trail and on-campus revival.
There is something very special happening right now, I believe.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A hospital blast highlighting misinformation in Israel's war with Hamas. Good evening, I'm Jenna Browder.
And from our studio in Washington, D.C., I'm John Jessup. Well, as the dust settles and the confusion begins to clear up after the deadly hospital blast in Gaza, early American intelligence shows the strike originated from Palestinian forces.
The U.S. assessment finds Israel not responsible for the deadly attack, based on overhead imagery, intercepts, and open source information. After the blast, there was, of course, conflicting reports. Hamas blaming an Israeli airstrike and reporting some 500 people killed. Israeli officials, though, have presented video evidence showing a failed rocket launch by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, a terror group aligned with Hamas. There's also a recording between Hamas and the Islamic Jihad admitting the failed launch. And on top of that, the Israeli Defense Force says Hamas is inflating the number of dead. This video shows the damage done to the parking lot next to the hospital, which military experts say resembles a rocket strike, not a bomb, which leaves a crater. President Biden also reiterating Israel did not bomb the hospital.
I was deeply saddened and outraged by the explosion at the hospital in Gaza yesterday. And based on what I've seen, it appears as though it was done by the other team, not you.
The lack of clear information has fueled protests across the region. Lebanon's Iran-backed terror group Hezbollah calling for a day of rage.
And closer to home on Capitol Hill, protesters entered a House office building calling for a ceasefire in the war between Hamas and Israel. The large group crowded under the balcony of the Cannon House office building rotunda wearing shirts emblazoned with the phrases, "Jews say ceasefire now and not in our name." U.S. Capitol Police warned that demonstrations are not allowed inside congressional buildings and arrested the protesters when they did not comply with an order to stop.
President Biden set to return to Washington tonight after his high-stakes trip to the Middle East, where he met with Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel.
Well, in addition to his stated support for Israel, the United States has issued fresh sanctions against 10 Hamas members and the terror network's organization's financial network across the Middle East. CBN's Hillary Powell is monitoring the developments. Hillary, there's growing concern of wider regional unrest and humanitarian catastrophe.
It's true. While Biden is offering Israel strong support, he is equally condemning both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. His words reveal the complex diplomatic balancing act in a war with widespread suffering. Poised once more as comforter-in-chief, President Joe Biden embraced Israeli survivors of the Hamas terror attack, along with first responders in Tel Aviv.
I come to Israel with a single message. You're not alone. You are not alone.
Firm words from the president as he also met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss next steps in the war with Hamas and a potential ground invasion of Gaza. Netanyahu expressed thanks for U.S. support.
I've seen your support every day in the depth and breadth of cooperation that we have had since the beginning of this war. A level of cooperation that is truly unprecedented.
As part of that support, the U.S. Treasury Department is targeting managers of a Hamas investment portfolio and a Qatar-based financial facilitator with close ties to the Iran regime, a key Hamas commander, and a Gaza-based virtual currency exchange. Iran is Hamas's main sponsor.
Because their actions are being dictated by Iran. And I think Iran was feeling extremely uncomfortable with the idea that Israel and Saudi Arabia could normalize. I think that would ultimately lead to virtually the entire Arab world along with Israel, aligned against Iran.
Israeli ground forces remain on alert at the Gaza border, ready to move in after Hamas terrorists killed more than 1,300 people 11 days ago. President Biden announced Israel's agreement to resume the flow of humanitarian assistance into Gaza from Egypt, with the understanding it would be subject to inspections.
The vast majority of Palestinians are not Hamas. Today, I asked the Israeli cabinet, who I met with for some time this morning, to agree to the delivery of life-saving humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza, based on the understanding that there will be inspections and that the aid should go to civilians, not to Hamas.
Looking ahead, the president says he's set to ask Congress for an unprecedented support package for Israel's defense later this week.
And Hillary, we know American officials say they're trying to broker aid and access to Gaza. Tell us, where do things stand now?
The United States vetoed a United Nations Security Council resolution that would have called for humanitarian pauses in the conflict between Israel and Hamas militants to allow humanitarian aid access to the Gaza Strip. Now, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, told the 15-member council after the vote that the U.S. is on the ground doing the hard work of diplomacy for now. John, Jenna.
All right, Hillary, thank you. Well, politically, the unrest in Israel is dividing the 2024 GOP presidential field. The question they're facing, just how far should America go in supporting Israel? CBN News chief political analyst David Brody reports.
When the war in Ukraine began, so did a philosophical divide in the GOP. The traditional conservative wing supported financial and military support, while the more populist isolationist wing sought to steer clear of the conflict. Now, following Hamas's wave of terror against Israel, the divide still shows up, but not as clear-cut. Each candidate agrees Israelis have the right to defend themselves, they should receive diplomatic support, and that President Biden's policies enabled the attack.
The Israeli attack was made because we are perceived as being weak and ineffective and with a really weak leader.
The Iranians are funding Hamas and Hezbollah and all these groups, and they're funding it in part with money that they've gotten because of the Biden administration's weak policies.
The division begins to take shape over how far America should go. Nikki Haley has been the most outspoken in that regard.
This is not just an attack on Israel. This is an attack on America because they hate us just as much. And I'll say this to Prime Minister Netanyahu, finish them. Finish them. Hamas did this. You know Iran's behind it. Finish them. They should have hell to pay for what they've just done.
Upstart populist Vivek Ramaswamy, however, sees that language as warmongering rhetoric.
She's representative of a broader wing of the Republican Party. The Lindsey Graham, John Bolton, Chris Christie, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley wing of the party that is trying to bring back an era, a bygone era for now, of disastrous U.S. Middle Eastern engagement, almost as though they're salivating over the opportunity to go to war again.
Former Vice President Mike Pence has used the war against Israel to accuse Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis, and former President Trump as voices of appeasement, as he calls them, when it comes to foreign conflicts like this.
If Mike Pence wants to blame me for what's happening, I think that most people would just laugh at that. What a joke.
Leader of the pack, former President Trump, as you might expect, marches to the beat of his own drum. While he has fully supported Israel, Trump's drawn criticism from rivals for calling Hezbollah very smart.
And they said, gee, I hope Hezbollah doesn't attack from the north because that's the most vulnerable spot. I said, wait a minute. You know, Hezbollah is very smart. They're all very smart. The press doesn't like when they say it.
He also criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying he didn't join forces with Trump to help take out a top Iranian terrorist.
I'll never forget that Bibi Netanyahu let us down. That was a very terrible thing. I will say that.
That led Mike Pence to pounce.
Look, all of this is out of place in this moment, and it's reckless and irresponsible for former President Trump or any American leader to send any message other than full and unconditional support to Israel.
And as the war in Israel potentially expands, the political fighting inside the GOP will heat up even more. especially if Iran gets involved. At that point, the divisions over what to do next in support of Israel could deepen even further. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, David. Tim Head is the executive director of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. He joins us now. Tim, welcome to you. So it's interesting to watch, as David just pointed out, former President Donald Trump faced criticism for being critical of Prime Minister Netanyahu and also calling Hamas very smart. He tried to walk back some of that criticism. A two-part question for you, Tim. Do you think Donald Trump is basically calling the shots with other candidates on his views when it comes to foreign relations with Israel? And how much will Israel factor into the elections 1 year from now?
Well, 1 year from now is a little hard to say because it's hard to even know exactly where we're going to be 1 week from now. I will say that, certainly President Trump has a strong and incredibly strong record when it comes to actually delivering on Israel. And frankly, I think his broader point is that he's trying to say that he arguably may even be more pro-Israel, in certain circumstances, even than some Israeli leaders. There were arguments against him even supporting moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem that he ignored and went ahead and moved. So, I'll say briefly, the splintering that you're seeing right now partly is political maneuvering, as a lot of candidates, as we're coming down the home stretch towards voting actually happening in Iowa just about 3 months from now. A lot of people are trying to differentiate from one another. So certainly they're making policy statements, but they're also trying to kind of demarcate themselves from others. And I think that you're seeing some kind of political maneuvering, if you will, in live time right now.
Yeah, to your point, Ron DeSantis was asked about allowing Palestinian refugees into the United States. He said, no, absolutely not. Nikki Haley, she responded, really criticizing DeSantis, saying that the U.S. has to be able to separate terrorists from innocent civilians. Tim, how are Christian voters thinking about all of this? What are you hearing?
Well, the broad, there are kind of several different kind of substrata of this conflict and ultimately probably war that we're headed towards right now in Israel. But the bottom line is overwhelmingly Christians believe that the United States needs to stand shoulder to shoulder with truly no air and no lights, so to speak, between us and Israel. And while that means that we need to have honest conversations on what Israel should be able to do. At the end of the day, we need to help them attain the resources that they need, either financial or military, to be able to take care of things, and frankly, also be able to also kind of hold back either Iran or Hezbollah as Israel's doing what they need to do.
Yeah. All right. Tim Head with the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks,
Great
Tim.
to see you.
Always. God bless.
Well, 2 weeks without a House Speaker. Still ahead on Faith Nation, what comes next in Congress with its chaotic job search? Well, welcome back. On Capitol Hill, another chaotic day for House Republicans after a second round of voting left the Republican House Conference with what's becoming a recurring problem. No speaker to run the U.S. House of Representatives.
Now, Ohio Republican Jim Jordan once again failing to get the 217 votes needed to secure the position. Losing support he had yesterday, today Jordan actually set a record, receiving the lowest vote tally for a majority's party speaker nominee. Caitlin Burke is following the Capitol chaos. Caitlin.
John, Jenna, the House remains paralyzed. Lawmakers unable to move anything forward at a time when two of our allies are at war and the government needs to be funded. Just today, an important hearing on the threat of Iran to U.S. Homeland Security postponed because of the Republican stalemate over a speaker.
Caitlin, so what options are still on the table for Republicans right now?
There's a growing push to pass a resolution which would give Speaker Pro Tem Patrick McHenry temporary powers as House Speaker so that Congress can function until someone is elected to permanently fill the position. Jordan's team, however, is reportedly working against that plan, wanting to keep pushing for the votes.
No, I mean, I think we should get a Republican speaker. I've been very clear about that, and I think that's where the conference is. That's what our rules suggest. So let's get a Republican speaker and get about the people's business.
Democrats, meanwhile, could be open to some sort of a deal that involves electing a temporary speaker.
There have been ongoing informal conversations that have been undertaken over the last few days. I think it's a possibility those can accelerate now that Jim Jordan clearly does not have the votes to be Speaker. For good reason. Jim Jordan is the poster child for MAGA extremism. He is a clear and present danger to our democracy.
And Caitlin, what are we hearing since the failed second vote? What comes next?
Well, a recess was called immediately after, and Republicans are now expected to be in a closed-door conference meeting. Jim Jordan says, however, there will not be another vote tonight, and he's staying in the race for now. John, Jenna?
All right, Caitlin Burke, thank you very much. We'll continue to follow it. All right, what happens when the Holy Spirit hits Auburn University? The spiritual transformation happening on campus next. Welcome back. Across America, an outpouring of the Holy Spirit has been sweeping college campuses. Auburn University is the latest to receive the revival fire.
That's right. At a recent Christian gathering there, it went from a time of worship down to a time at the water when hundreds of students took place in an impromptu mass baptism.
Abigail Robertson spoke with some who witnessed God's movement firsthand.
When Christian leaders decided to organize a worship night called Unite Auburn, they had no idea how many people would actually come. The amazing turnout resulted in around 6,000 students filling Auburn's Neville Arena and some 200 being baptized.
It was such a move of God.
I don't have words. Anyway, there's all these students coming to get baptized.
Jenny Allen, Christian author and founder of the If Gathering, spoke at the event.
There is something very special happening right now, I believe, in their hearts. I think they are hungry for God and they want God in a very real way. This is not manufactured.
Allen tells CBN News as the event came to a close, one student asked a pastor next to her if she could be baptized.
So I go up on the stage. It was that fast. And I said, hey, there's somebody that wants to get baptized tonight. Would anybody else want to trust Christ and be baptized tonight? And dozens of hands were raised all over the arena, and it was wild.
But it is because of Jesus.
The group moved to a lake about a mile from the stadium and started streaming into the water to receive Christ. Some joined friends, like this group of fraternity brothers.
We didn't just baptize them. We got to hear their stories, and they got to tell us why they wanted to do this tonight. And so many of them were just tired of the darkness that they were living in. They wanted Jesus, and they wanted a different way to live. And it was so sincere. It was so sincere. You can see it in their eyes.
CBN News recently spoke with Christian author Madison Pruitt-Trout, whose family was involved in organizing the event.
It was just so amazing, and so many coming, to us saying, hey, I just want to be clean. I just want to be pure. And so many rededicating their life, dedicating their life, and just saying, hey, I don't want to follow the world's way anymore. Like, I want to go all in with Jesus.
What do you think God is doing in Gen Z?
He's pouring out a spirit, like it talks about, in Scripture. And we're seeing, I believe we're living in, the end times, and you're seeing his spirit be poured out, and, people coming to see God for the first time in a new light that's beyond religion, beyond tradition, and say, man, I want this God who radically saves and transforms. And it's so cool to see.
The event's impact even led prominent atheist group, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, to demand Auburn put a stop to religion in its athletic programs. The letter called the presence of Auburn's football, baseball, and basketball coaches unconstitutional and inappropriate. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey fired back in a statement, saying we will not be intimidated by out-of-state interest groups dedicated to destroying our nation's religious heritage.
This generation, yes, they may be on paper seemingly not attending church and seemingly not walking with God. But that is prime for revival. So I think it's affecting the world. Most of them have lived a pretty non-God existence prior to these moments. And so when you see this happen, I think it moves all of us.
Allen described the unique reaction when she first reached out to Gen Z in 2018 at Texas A&M.
There was just probably 2,000 people there, and they began to stand up and yell out their sin in front of their roommates, in front of their friends. They were yelling out things like suicidal thoughts and sex addiction and alcohol abuse and all of these things that they were just screaming out in front of their friends. And I thought something is different. They wanted God more than they wanted approval from their friends. They wanted God more than they wanted to be accepted and respected.
Allen says while these moves of God all look different, one thing they have in common is this next generation's real and genuine desire for Jesus.
I think it's because of the darkness, the anxiety, the depression that they've battled. And so, you know, they're looking at Jesus and they're saying, I want forgiveness. I need forgiveness. I want what he's offering. And I really don't care what other people think. And it's powerful.
She adds, for those hoping to see this in their church and college campus, the formula is simple and remains the same. Pray.
I'm not surprised that after that night happened, I had a group of girls reach out that had been praying by the lake, of all places, that we baptized. And they had been praying on Fridays and leading worship and asking God to move. So I believe it starts with prayer.
This year, CBN News has reported on multiple mass baptism events all over the country that don't appear to be slowing down. Both Madison and Jenny credited local churches as key to the success at Auburn. Their support, presence, and leadership allowed them to be there for students eager to receive Jesus and help disciple new converts as they begin their walks with the Lord. Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Inspiring report. Thank you, Abby. Well, the most unexpected kitchen guest. Next on Faith Nation. Look at that. Finally tonight, kitchen raid, and it was all caught on camera with an uninvited and unusual suspect.
Yeah, we're calling him Lasagna Bear. On Thursday, a Ring camera caught a black bear breaking into a northern Connecticut home and satisfying his pre-hibernation craving. Footage shows the bear entering the home through an unlocked window and wandering around the home for half an hour before making a beeline for the kitchen. The bear opening the freezer and snagging leftover lasagna, exiting through the same window with his meal in paw. Experts say encounters with bears could be on the rise as animals are preparing for hibernation.
Can you imagine?
No, I was wondering if the family was there when this was happening.
Lord, I hope not.
How scary.
Thanks so much for watching.
Have a great night.